Whenever you are ready to start, so are we.
Hello, I'm Emily, and this is my presentation on ritualistic synchrony during the Holocaust. While looking over the stimulus provided, it was clearly evident that there was an ongoing theme addressing conformity within society. This was further reiterated in the journal entry, The Cultural Evolutionary Trade-off of Ritualistic Synchrony, which argues that ritualistic synchrony is directly related to conformity and can encourage negative antisocial effects, such as group conflict and loss of one's individual beliefs. Knowing this, I decided to focus my research on the Holocaust, which is believed to be one of the most horrific acts of genocide against humanity. The Holocaust refers to the period of systematic state-sponsored persecution and mass murder that occurred during Nazi Germany rule. It originally stemmed from anti-Semitism, which refers to prejudice and discrimination towards Jews, yet eventually targeted a variety of individuals deemed as undesirables for racial, political, ideological, and behavioral reasons. These individuals were subject to inhumane conditions, which often resulted in gruesome death. This mass genocide operation was executed through the instillment of constant propaganda and ritualistic synchrony throughout Germany, which prompted conformity within society and created a unified preference for the pure Aryan race, further justifying the actions of genocide in German society. Children in Germany were often targets of this ritualistic synchrony and were heavily manipulated into adopting twisted views on outside peoples. In this way, the Nazi regime attempted to condition the next generation of citizens to follow in their footsteps. This leads to the question, to what extent did ritualistic synchrony in the environment of German children play a role in the mass genocide exhibited during the Holocaust? After thorough research, 3 resolutions can be determined about the types of synchronized education that promoted the development of stereotypes and aggression towards outside peoples, including parents and education workers. Yet, peer pressure is believed to be the most influential. This is supported by the informational journals, The Cultural Evolutionary Trade of Ritualistic Synchrony, and Cognitive Developmental Neuroscience, which describe the significance of peer pressure. This idea is further reiterated in the namesake. It is vital to examine how ritualistic synchrony in Germany brainwashed the society in order to ensure that history does not repeat itself. The belief in racial superiority was easily passed on to children from family figures such as parents. For instance, parents would both vocalize distaste and participate in discriminatory actions towards Jews. Though some of these behaviors occurred unintentionally from previous bias, children still conformed to these beliefs. A study conducted in 2021 compared the racial attitudes and intergroup orientations of children in relation to their parents. The study identified the parents as mediators of the positive relationship in between conformity, orientation, and racial prejudice. Furthermore, these racial preferences directly correlated with ritualistic synchrony in the home. Ritualistic synchrony refers to the repetition of certain actions, usually conducted in a group setting to promote conformity. For instance, in Germany, many families that supported the actions of Adolf Hitler contained images of him in the home, which allowed children to easily recognize the figure. Parents also often used Nazi slogans and gestures around the household, which further exposed children to racism and encouraged them to participate in these actions. According to the stimulus source, The Cultural Evolutionary Trade-off of Ritualistic Synchrony, ritualistic synchrony has been proven to have many antisocial effects, including encouraging group conflict, decreasing group creativity, and increasing harmful obedience. This combination of obedience and parental influence made adaptation of beliefs inevitable. Adults at educational facilities also influence children by heavily stressing internalized bias, mainly through the implementation of Nazi beliefs into youth curriculum. Following the start of World War II, the Reich Ministry of Education, Culture, and Science took control of the education systems in Germany. Since it was founded under the government, there was prominent anti-Semitic bias. The ministry made many cuts in staff based on political views and created one unified German education system. This conformity within staff was further aided by the establishment of the National Socialist Teachers League. Membership in the league was required in order to retain a job, as evident by a 97% membership rate in 1937. These schools often had anti-Semitic curriculum, which further reiterated the bias the children were most likely already experiencing at home. Youth camps such as Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls were also established during this time. These camps focused on Nazi ideology and dehumanizing undesirables. In fact, in 1939, the further legislation made membership in these youth camps mandatory for most children from the ages of 10 to 18 years old. As German children attended these Nazified schools and youth camps, they were surrounded by fellow peers and even more likely to conform. The stimulus source developmental cognitive neuroscience supports this idea. A study comparing the likelihood of children from the ages of 12 to 14 deferring to the beliefs of peers and parents found that when they did conform, adolescents were more likely to conform to their peers' attitudes. This demonstrates that a child's peers are often the most influential during development. Since peer pressure during World War II would advocate for pro-Nazi beliefs, conformity occurred. Nazi slogans and gestures aided in this conformity. For instance, greetings during this time became increasingly propagandized. This is supported by Erika Mann, who was a child during the beginning of World War II in Germany. According to her, children would often use the phrase Heil Hitler many times during the span of a day, including greeting peers at school. These propagandized greetings were pushed onto children, and as they saw their peers take part, they did so as well in order to fit in. This is further analyzed in the stimulus source, The Namesake, in which the main character, Gongal, a 14-year-old boy from Bengali, struggles with his self-identity when comparing himself to his American classmates. He feels pressured by his peers to change his unusual name to fit in. This demonstrates an adolescent questioning himself and his beliefs because of his peers. Though this instance of assimilation is near harmless, the Holocaust often strives from such conformity. Peer pressure such as this help prolong the Holocaust and its detrimental effects. These are the resources I use to create this presentation. Thank you.
All right. I have 2 questions for you, then we'll applaud. Okay. So my first question is, how did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process?
At the beginning of my research process, I wanted to focus my presentation on how all of German society was pressured into conforming because of ritualistic synchrony. But after further research, I realized that children were the most prone to conform, so I decided to just specifically focus on children in Germany.
Good. My next question for you is, what additional questions emerged from your research and why are they important?
As I was researching, I realized what an important role ritualistic synchrony played in genocide, specifically the Holocaust, and questions emerged in my mind about how ritualistic synchrony was used in other situations of genocide around the world in history. And I believe this is important because if we figure out the main causes of ritualistic synchrony, then we could attempt to decrease that and make sure that it isn't used in a manipulative manner.
All right, excellent job. All right, will we turn that recording off?